All right, hey traders, TG Watkins here, and we got everything up and running. Should be in the Moxie room, and then also over, I don't know, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So hopefully everybody can see me out there, and we got this up and running. So we'll dive into it. You can come over here to profitpilot.com if you have any questions about who I am, or interested in the way that I trade or talk about the markets or anything else like that. That being said, we had Google and Microsoft earnings out today, and they went down pretty large. And then Amazon and Meta kind of followed them in suit, a little bit of a sympathy play. But Apple, Tesla, quite a few other names are up today. So we got a little bit of a pullback. I was expecting a bit more today. So we got a little bit of the pullback. Oh, I guess I gotta redo this. And the pullback so far seems to basically be to the 15-minute 50 on the SPY. And we've got a range, a variety of each index is of its own strength. So we'll kind of go through that. And the NASDAQ is the weakest. That's no surprise. The Dow is the strongest. Okay. The IWM is the second strongest, and that's a little bit of a surprise to me. But what we can see here is that so far we got the pullback to the 15-minute 50 right there on the SPY. It still seems a little bit frothy. It seems a little bit extended up there, and that has me just wary, because yes, it did do that, but it is still really pushing that third ATR on the hourly chart. And if we look at the daily chart, we are pushing beyond it, but we are coming into the daily 50. And typically at some point we are going to get a pullback, around that area. It's difficult for price to really just kind of keep pushing up there without doing some sort of pullback. And so I kind of look at that and say, well, the name of the game is trying to figure out when and where that pullback is. JTD, thanks for letting me know that, yeah, good on YouTube. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking at. We're also starting to see that we're getting a little bit of a distance here on the daily chart underneath those moving averages. And so just generally seeing that, prices, it's nice. Price is moving up. We've got a trade on with this. We took a little bit off just because of the earnings reports. Had a little effect, not a ton. But at this point, I do want to see what the next opportunity is going to be. I'm just not sure that this is it. So if we look at let me come over here, the higher time frames. And basically what I'm looking for, I was kind of thinking maybe the hourly 21, but I think it might be a little bit further, because if we are going to go further, and I some people have target 390, some have 400, other people are talking about the daily 200 as far as targets on this move up. Not entirely sure about that. I think 390 is very conservative. I think that's doable. I mean, look, we're $3 away from that. So I think that's doable. Now, is it doable in this straight move? I don't know. Maybe. That would be very interesting. If it is, then I'll exit, and then I'll keep looking for that pullback, and would have gotten our target. What would be ideal is to get a pullback at some point and then continue forward. Now, just remember some of the other things. The wall of worry that we have over the next 2 weeks. Well, this week we still have more earnings. Okay, so we have a lot of that going on. Earnings roulette. And then I think on the second we have even GDP numbers this week, so that might manipulate or move a little bit. And then the second we have the FOMC, so they are expected to raise 75 basis points. Britain, England just raised 50 basis points. They were expected to raise 75, but they did 50. We're expected to raise 75. I think that's all baked into the cake. The thing that I think will probably move the markets a little bit is basically what Jerome Powell says in his speech, or in the briefing that they put out, and then also the Q&A session, and we'll have to see what they say about that. And then, yeah, thanks JTD. 50 basis points for Canada. Oh, Canada. So there you go. And then let's see what else. We got the midterm elections on the 8th. So we got that. I don't think that'll really be too much. And then really, I think the big showstopper is going to be on the 10th, which is CPI, because as it's been, CPI is what the Fed looks at. The CPI number is going to really kind of dictate what the Fed's going to do. Are they going to, is CPI going to continue to come in hot, and that's going to be a problem, and that's going to give more ammunition to the Fed to keep raising rates, and even though they had that Wall Street Journal article come out last Friday saying, yeah, we're going to do one more 75, and then we're going to start thinking about how we can reduce our interest rate raises, maybe 50 and 25 after that. If CPI continues to come in hot or sticky, they might still have more motivation to keep raising and change what they said from last Friday. That's always a possibility. We just don't know. We really just don't know. So we're gonna have to kind of navigate this minefield over the next 2 weeks until the 10th and see what happens there. If we are going to go higher, minus all this news, if we're going to keep going higher, then I would like to see a pullback, as I was saying earlier. So the fact that we were kind of getting up through here, through the daily 50, I'd like to see somehow like a pullback kind of like this. I think this would be a good example of what to look for, because let me zoom in a little bit. Because if you look through here, you can see price started getting a little bit frothy. You can see they're starting to pull away from the 8 EMA. You can see the same thing here. It's starting to kind of pull away from the 8 EMA. Yes, price was able to get over the daily 50. I'm going to have to see if it actually can get that far over the daily 50. I'm less inclined to think that it's going to be able to get this far over the daily 50, mostly because if you look at the hourly chart, we're kind of getting into the same situation here on the hourly chart that we are currently in the hourly chart. So meaning kind of extended, pretty far up there. So it's kind of around this area that I'd really love to see a pullback. And my guess is that pullback might end up actually being towards the hourly 50 and would end up being, probably below the daily 8 and probably closer to the daily 21. And if that worked out and we could then figure out if that it was going to hold and start to move up, that would be the next move to the upside. And I think that would be pretty good. I think that would be something workable. And that might help get us to 400. And maybe that would get us up to the daily 200. But again, we're going to have to kind of take this one step at a time. For those of you in the Moxie room or with Simpler, I'm going to be in the options room. I think at 11:30 this morning, so 11:30 Central. And that's where we can kind of dive a little bit deeper. I'm going to go back, look at 1982, look at 2000, look at the 70s. We're going to go back and kind of try to figure out what patterns and setups and just how the market moved back then that we should pay attention to now and see if there's anything we can kind of pull from it. So I did a little bit of that research last night because it's good to go back and look at history and see if we can figure out what these things look like in the past so we can better understand some of the roadmaps going forward. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I think that covers that for the SPY. And I wanted to show you guys the Dow. Look at this. The Dow is pretty amazing. This thing is, a nice big move up here. You can see here that when it did test the hourly 50, the 50 was already over the 200. I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's a nice serious move right there. And you can see that it is subsequently responding quite well to that. It is definitely over its daily 50 compared to the SPY, which is just now starting to get to and past its daily 50. So definitely relative strength over here on the Dow. However, my concern is that we are now starting to hit that third ATR, and we are really starting to pull away from the 8 EMA. So if I look at this, and again, third ATR up here and kind of pulling away from moving averages. If I look at this definitely does have me a little bit concerned on the high side, being like, this is kind of getting to a point where we should probably expect things to chill out a little bit. Pull back, flag, something to that extent. So even though maybe the SPY doesn't look terribly overbought, I look at something like the Dow and it's like, well, of course, if they're all going to move together, maybe not the same, but they're going to move together, then I look at this and I look at down, I'm like, this is getting to a point where I'd be a little bit concerned about it, at least on the upside. So this seems an area where you would want to be lightening up your bullish load as opposed to initiating any kind of bullish trades. If you're day trading, that's a different thing. But if we're trying to swing trade and kind of look at the trends and all that, that's kind of where I come up from there. And then the IWM, kind of the same thing as the Dow. This is a pretty good move. It's actually better than I thought it was going to be, considering it had a bit of a slow start. Also considering it went below the hourly 50, whereas the SPY actually bounced off the hourly 50 and the Dow was bounced perfectly off the hourly 50 when it was already up there. So this looked like it had relative weakness, but this has been a couple pretty good days. So even today, pretty good day. But again, it looks like it's starting to get a bit overbought, getting a little bit frothy up there. Not too often does price really stay over the hourly 50. And yeah, I'd kind of expect some sort of pullback. Like, this is pretty good on the daily chart, and I'd like to see a pullback. Even if we look back here, I mean, all the way back to, what was this, March? Even March, you could see, came up here, there was a pullback. Up here, there was a pullback. And so it just kind of seems we might be in the same area. The trend could keep going higher, but I think that we should be looking for and prepared for a pullback to develop, which means, we can still look long, but just get your timing right. I wouldn't really want to be initiating some bullish trades right in through here on this point. That being said, if we look at the UVXY, this is something I've been talking about quite a bit, and you can see I even had a line. So this worked out to be a perfect 50, 200, 50 maneuver. Now it took a little bit. The Moxie group, we talked about the UVXY bouncing right there. It did, but it went higher than I thought it was. But that still worked out to be the 50, 250, ran right into the 200. You can even see we had negative divergence with the Moxie indicator versus price. And then look, there's your Moxie price trigger. So, for anybody out there in Meta and Twitter or YouTube, if you guys have been watching me for a while or don't have the Moxie indicator and wondering how this thing works and want to know how you can incorporate it, I mean, I don't hide anything. This is exactly what we do. This is how I talk to the Moxie group, everything else like that. But, we've been watching that negative divergence, been watching that price trigger, and then we were watching price move down. I was going to see if there was a little bit of a bounce here because I was looking for a pullback on the SPY. So that would have been just a little bit of a bounce on the UVXY, which would have been a great place to load up. That's what I was looking for. It would have been awesome if we kind of got a little bounce right there, could have loaded up short, and we would have loaded up long on the SPY right through there. But that didn't happen, so everything just kept going the direction we already were in, so fine. And you can see there, Moxie indicator, super red, just going down. And I was looking for price to head back down to the daily 50, probably below the daily 50. Well, there we go. Now it's happening. So the UVXY is a bit of a screwy vehicle, so not going to lean too much on it right now, but it is getting pretty oversold here. You can see it's gotten a little bit frothy to the downside. Let's just kind of look back a little bit and see what happens when it gets there. You can actually see that even in this last trend down, price on the UVXY did not really go outside of the third ATR, maybe like right there, but you can see pretty much every time that it got to the third ATR, it bounced. So let me just reference that again. If we look here, where are we? We are outside of the third ATR. And so that actually might be something worth noting. I mean, look at this. Every single time it gets to the third ATR, it doesn't really go outside of the third ATR. I mean, I'm trying to look back here. There was one situation right there. Look at that. Where price got outside of the third ATR, and look at the snapback that it had. So I can't say if it's going to do that or not, but that's something to note. And then even here, another big drop, but it all stayed within the third ATR. So that's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Yeah, even some other big drops. I mean, look at this. All these drops, stayed within the third ATR. They might have ridden it, but they stayed within or just at the third ATR. So very interesting to see that. I'm wondering if this actually might demonstrate that it's getting a little bit excessive, both to the upside for the market and to the downside for the UVXY. Okay, so just something to be aware of. And we might be getting that pullback on the SPY that I'm looking for. And remember, we do still have earnings coming out this week. We got some big players, and we saw what happened to Google and Amazon, right? Or Microsoft? Should we look at that? So Google, oof, yeah, oof. Now, from a technical standpoint, obviously this was earnings, but from a technical standpoint, it did run right into the underside of its daily 50. This is why I'm saying I'm a little bit concerned about the SPY running into its daily 50. Yesterday, it ran into its daily 50. Today, it is able to push past it a little bit, but I do view the daily 50 as an area of resistance because it is in a downtrend. And so if we are eventually going to get over and past the daily 50, I feel like we're going to need to see some work done. I don't think we're just going to keep going up through it. We're going to have to see it pull back, find some support, test it, and then move through. So daily 50 there on Google. Let's see if Microsoft, yeah, look, it did the same thing. Look at that, right smack into the underside of the daily 50. Yeah, And you can see even from the hourly chart, you can see, again, I know it's earnings, so it's a news event, but if we really kind of just talk about the technical side of it, this is the same kind of configuration that the S&P is in. Same configuration. So that's why I'm just saying, be a little bit prepared. Don't be surprised about a pullback that might be coming or developing with the market in general. And very interesting to see what I just saw with the UVXY. Let's look at the VIX, see if that kind of says anything differently. The VIX, those of you in the Moxie room, and maybe even over here on the social medias, I don't know if you guys know, but I've been calling for the VIX to come back down to the daily 50. There you go. We got it. And then let's look over here on the weekly, because, yep, there you go. The weekly, I was also saying, should come down to about the weekly 21. So we've gotten that. Now, the only other concern about this, and I don't think that the bear market's over. We could hold around here for a while, but I do think we're going to make lower lows. I'm not sure that the Fed pivot is here, despite them communicating through Wall Street Journal that they're going to start reducing the rate of increases on interest rates. Say that 5 times fast. So yeah, I just don't think we're over yet. I think that this is a little bit of I think this is some red meat to the bulls. And I think that we're trying to drive things up. I think that they might have put that news out there a little bit to have us as traders act as the plunge protection team to get stuff to move up a little bit. And then, from there, I think it's about CPI. So it's going to be very interesting to see where CPI comes out and if that's going to be the thing that kind of rings the bell and puts stuff back down again. I don't know. That's going to be a wild one. I think CPI is going to be pretty crazy. Let's see. Anders, VIX daily 200 for backstop on the trampoline. Yes. So generally, now mind you, Anders, that this is the VIX. Okay, so it doesn't always follow the perfect rules. I can usually wrap the Moxie indicator stuff around it, but typically when we do have the 50 over the 200 and price goes below the 50 while the Moxie indicator is above 0. So let me start that over. Let me clean that up. When price goes below the 50 and the Moxie indicator is above 0, that's a trampoline move. When you incorporate the 200 in there as well, so 50 is in an uptrend, price goes below the 50, but the Moxie indicator is above 0, and then you have the 200 under here. If price can go between the 50 and the 200 and then rebound, yes, that's great. You're using the exact word that I use. I call it a backstop. So it's a trampoline move with a backstop. And when that works, it's a pretty good play. It's a pretty good play. But now we'll have to see if that works for the VIX. I'm not so sure. I can't say it for sure, but I don't really think that the VIX is going to go that low. It's just my guess. That is my opinion. That's how I'm just kind of reading things. But not sure if the VIX is going to go to the 200. That would be pretty crazy. If it did, gosh, maybe that would mean that the SPY goes to its daily 200. But I'm just not sure that's in the picture. At least I can't see it yet. So we'll have to take that kind of a day at a time. We have a lot of news and events coming up in the next 2 weeks that are going to probably make the market a little bit jittery. But maybe what we could see is this lower trend line. I could see that. So we'll have to just see. We'll have to take that one step at a time. Not like I'm really trading the VIX to the downside. I'm more being aware of the VIX getting into what I think is support levels. Trying to think if it was like was it XLE? I'm trying to see if I can figure out any of those trampoline moves with a backstop that I was talking about. And let me see if I can find. Yeah, here we go. So let me go over here. So XLE, you can see this. Here was a backstop for XLE. So price was below the 50, the Moxie indicator was above 0, and it stayed over the 200. Let me see, I think USO, I think I might have mentioned that on USO. Yeah, close. This one worked. It was sloppy, but you can see here that this was a trampoline move. So price below the 50, the Moxie indicator above 0, and at the time it was holding the 200. So that looked pretty good. But we needed to see it confirm, and basically right here, you can see it kind of went up and then rolled over and failed the 200. So, no trade. There were zero setups here, nothing actually to work with. It was just potential. I kept guiding about this, looking at this, saying, hey, this looks like it might be something. And then you have to wait. And where you needed to wait, ideally, actually, we were talking about this yesterday. I was like, this actually looks pretty good. And so it's what I was getting a little skittish about our Gush, our XOP/Gush trade. But I looked at the USO and I was like, everything looks kind of okay about the USO. This looks great. We do have the 8 over the 21. And look, the Moxie indicator stayed above 0 the entire time, plus we got a squeeze. And yesterday I was like, well, we do have the 8 over the 21, price over the 50 over the 200, and the Moxie indicator over 0. It looks like it's trying to move up. And if you look at here on the daily chart, we actually have an inverse head and shoulders on the daily. And I was saying that yesterday, I was like, well, all it needs to do is get past the daily 50. Boom. There it is today. So that's moving up. And we actually have, XOP moving up nicely today. So good, solid move. As I said, I was getting a little skittish about this, mostly because I don't like things that in this market are flagging because they can kind of go either direction. And I was like, well, there's not exactly anything wrong with this. It's not quite moving the way I thought it was going to be moving. But today is a good day, so I'm happy about that. It looks like it did bounce off of the 21 EMA, and basically it was flagging sideways into an uptrending hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator above 0. We've got the Moxie price trigger. Everything looked pretty good. So yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at. All right, let's see. Thunderbird, Canada raised 50 basis points today, which was a surprise where the markets expected, 75. Somewhat of an indicator of what our Fed may do. Maybe, I guess, maybe. Although the U.S. has been the toughest on interest rate raises compared to other countries. So yeah, I did hear that they raised 50 basis points instead of the expected 75. But, I think the Fed's trying to play a tougher game. So yeah, my understanding through the people I talk to and other traders is that if the market is expecting a 75 basis rate hike and they do 50, that should be pretty bullish. That should be really bullish for the market. So if that happens, I would say expect bullishness because they took off they put on the kid gloves basically if that's the case. So let's see, rum for a short on a rally into the election around the $11. Oh, well, Rumble. Okay, isn't that that's like the competitor YouTube, is that right? Thunderfin, I'm not so sure about this. Oh yeah, didn't finish your sentence. Conservative version of YouTube and a SPAC company. Wildly high valuation compared to underlying metrics. I don't know, man. I just don't want to touch stuff like this. It comes out of nowhere. It's just got not enough data on it for me to trust things. So I tend to I'll watch it just to kind of learn what it wants to do, but I'm not so sure. If you're talking about a short, the only reason I would say short is because it's trying to complete the Moxie patterns. So, if this is the leg and this is the heel and we're trying to form the arch of the foot, then I could see there being a little bit more upside, potentially. But then yes, I would expect a pullback to retest the low area and then move up. And so if you're looking for a short, it would be on that from the arch of the foot to the ball of the foot. The same thing goes for the hourly. This is the first time price is trying to move up over a downtrending hourly 50. So yeah, at some point I would expect a pullback into an uptrending 50. Now you can play that pullback, sure, just like we were expecting the SPY to pull back. But I think that's the risky play. If this thing sets up to go long, then great. But you're trying to short what I think is going to end up being something like that. Yes, it's possible, but you better be right and better be quick because you need to short into this area and then you can see clearly how it wants to go long. So that might be the situation with rum if you're going to be trading. I think that trading it short would be a little bit risky until we can really kind of confirm it. Like I can't tell yet if Rumble wants to go higher and it's going to pull back into support and go higher, or if it wants to go lower and this is a bounce and a downtrend. I can't figure that out right now based on what I'm seeing with it. So I think that's the problem. I don't really know what this thing wants to do as far as its trend. So that's why I probably wouldn't really want to mess with it. Yeah, so short if it forms an inverse elf shoe. Yeah, but it's not really in a position to do an inverse elf shoe. If anything, it's in a position to do a failed elf shoe. Like, sorry, anybody else out there on YouTube and Facebook or whatever who's hearing all these weird words that I'm using, this is the lingo and this is the words and descriptions that I've come up with to describe the patterns. I know it sounds weird and you're like, what are you talking about? But if you learn how I teach the Moxie system and that I have these words, it really makes a lot of sense. And now we can actually describe definitive patterns, and we all have the same language. So even though it sounds like we're talking weird stuff, I get it. So I don't see an inverse elf shoe. I mean, unless Thunderfan, where you can point one out to me, maybe we'll talk about this in the options room session. But if anything, this is trying to come from down here and then hammer out an elf shoe like that. But if it's going to be bearish, then what it's going to do is it's going to do, a failed elf shoe. I don't see an inverse elf shoe. An inverse elf shoe is usually coming from the top and then going down like that. This looks like it would try to be failed kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of all I'm coming from, but there's just not a whole lot of information to work with on this one. The inverse elf shoe, if we go back to the SPY, was here. It was a pattern within a pattern. So here was the leg, here was the heel, here was the arch of the foot, there was the ball of the foot, and then there was the elf toe. I was able to define that this was an inverse elf shoe, but it's not like something you should short because we were actually trying to go long. We were actually looking for the 5250 maneuver, but within that maneuver, there was a bit of an inverse elf shoe that we could work with. Did I want to short it? No. Only if we're day trading could you do a short like that. So, if you were, I guess, if you were going to be looking for that inverse elf shoe on rum, we're a long ways away from that actually happening and forming. So you'd have to really watch. Yeah, we're so far off from that happening. So you'd really have to watch and see if it's going to do it. Because if that was, then yeah, that would be the leg, heel, there's the arch of the foot, come up here, there's the ball of the foot, and then back down there. So yeah, a ways off. But if that happens, we have to confirm that this thing actually wants to go lower as opposed to trying to be hammering out a bottom and wants to go higher. I have zero of that enough information right now to figure that out. So, all right, but thanks. That was kind of fun. I love getting these little curveballs and looking at stuff. So, all right, man. Well, thanks, guys, everyone out there. I'm going to be signing off for the rest of Simpler Trading or anybody in the Moxie room. I'm going to be back on the mic in the options room, the Moxie room, I think at 11:30. I'll have to look at my calendar, but it's on the Simpler calendar. And we'll see you guys there.